I'm Andrew Robinson.
I'm Emiliano.
I'm Lee Sems.
We're Leather and Loom. This is Watch Mod Perfect. And today we're going to talk about some watch hot takes. We're just going to rip a couple, go in a circle, and then see reaction. So we haven't talked about any of the hot takes with each other yet, so it's going to be natural. But I got the mic, so I guess I'll get started. Lee was talking about how he really likes Omega, and I wrote down last night. I was like, wow, I really think that Omega is kind of boring, and their catalog is way too damn big.
Rolex.
Omega.
Beautiful.
So, Lee, what do you have to say about this hot take?
It's a totally fair criticism. I mean, that's the one thing that I think Omega's drawn the most heat for over the last few years. Is like every 3 months there's a limited edition, and it definitely waters down the models certainly a little bit. Whether it waters down the brand or not, I think is to be determined. But I think where Omega really started to catch that heat was when they partnered with Swatch, their parent company, to release the Moon Swatch, right? And so it got real
plastic ceramic,
like bio-ceramic or whatever. Right? They're cool, right? Like they're fun watches, but it's just a lot, and no one really knows where they want to go with Omega. So I think that's a totally fair criticism.
I have a second hot take, and the second hot take is the Omega Moon Swatch is a waste of money.
Oh, that is a hot take. Well, I think for the sake of our conversation, I think it's a waste of money if your goal is to have a Speedmaster.
Yes,
that's
a great way to frame it.
There's a lot of folks that really like the vibe of a Speedy, but they're just not in a position to or not ready to buy one, and maybe that will scratch the itch. And I'm certainly not yucking someone's yum there on that, but it's a plastic quartz watch, right? It's cheap. The movement is not super durable or reliable. So, I would say like if you're just buying it because it's fun, wear it. But like, I totally agree with you.
If you're a watch collector and you're doing it for the nicheness of it, do it. But if you're doing it and you're like, I want to watch, this is my gateway, then I think that you're setting yourself up to be sad just by a Seiko. Last plug, and then I'll hand the mic over. The catalog thing, it's weird. I say Omega has this massive catalog, and that kind of like pisses me off. I don't know why. But then Grand Seiko, I love the brand Grand Seiko, and like they have a dictionary full of watches that they have at one time. So
that's right.
I don't know why I feel that way about Omega, so I'm sorry. Just stop talking about space all the time. But,
all right, I'm not going to change the subject. I'm actually going to add to it. Do you think Omega's trying to increase its catalog to then corner the market on watch sales to appeal to a broader audience? Rolex, which is one of the kind of most private companies, right? They're just like the Hershey family, the Mars family of like the chocolatiers. It's a very private company. I think still sells more watches than any other company. In this last year, they cornered something like 30% of last year's watch sales. Do you think Omega's trying to do that in the same way? Like, yes, Grand Seiko has a lot of watches, but they're all kind of in the same vein, and they have a lot of variety of the same theme. Omega's jumping themes. It's doing planet oceans. It's doing, space. It's just trying to like dive into everything to appeal to everybody, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair criticism. I mean, what I think Omega's marketing plan is, specifically with the Moon Swatch too, is to really start to capture some of that non-watch crowd, the people who might be traveling, because a lot of
tighter on their wallet,
a little bit tighter on the wallet, right? Like you could make a quick decision on a $300 watch more than you could on a $6,500 Speedmaster, right? And so, you see a lot of people wearing Apple watches, wearing Android watches. Those aren't cheap, right? Those are still a couple $100 in many cases. And so I think they're trying to go after that market share, people that are used to wearing a watch, but they want to indoctrinate them into the mechanical watch world by starting with a quartz watch, which is ironic. But yeah, I agree. Like if you look at their whole catalog, it's a little bit all over the place. But maybe that's what it takes. I'm certainly not in the watch industry myself, so I don't know what it takes to reach your greatest audience, but they're definitely losing to Rolex. There's no question about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are we rounds complete on?
Yeah, I think we're rounds complete. I don't think I have any other criticisms on Omega.
Okay. Hot take. I'm really tired of the large watch game. I think anything.
That's a good one.
Let's go back to the 36 millimeters, the 38s. Like, let's go sub 40. I think it got. I'm sorry. I also have skinny wrists, so maybe I'm biased. But what do you think?
Read my first take.
36 millimeter watches are
the perfect watch.
The perfect watch that he has written on my phone. So
you guys are in agreement. I'm neutral on this actually. So I go back and forth between big and small watches. I also have small wrists, about 6 3/4 inch. So I can't pull off like a really big 45, 46, 47 for the most part.
And that was a huge thing 10, 15
It was
years
a big
ago.
thing. That's
That
what
was
people
a
wanted.
huge thing in the 2000s, turn of the century, was big, gaudy
That's right.
watches.
Yeah, and I still think there's some brands out there that are still trying to play to that, right? Like Panerai,
Invicta.
like most of Invicta is one. Panerai is another one though, right? Like even a lot of Breitling's watches are still pretty big, but I think there's a lot that goes into wearability of a watch, right? So I think that's the best thing about a 36 millimeter is they usually have short lug to lugs, and they sit nicely on most people's wrists. They look good. It's kind of the golden proportion, somewhere between 36 and 38. But you can still pull off a big watch if it's a good material like titanium. So we talked about the Pelagos earlier off camera. Pelagos is not a small watch. I mean, it's thick and it's big and it's a pretty healthy lug to lug. I think like 49 plus. Yeah. But it wears amazing on the wrist because it's got that oyster case back. It just kind of perches on your wrist and it's light. Great bracelet. So I agree though. I think just in generally, if you just had to say what is the perfect size, somewhere between 36 and 38, and that's in the vintage world, man. That's just what you guys do.
Yeah,
so,
I my first Rolex was a deep sea. And
that's a big boy.
And so I like a lot of people start with like 36 or 37 and work their way up. I started with like 44, and now I'm like, oh my god, like 36, that's awesome. So yeah, I'm definitely like a 36 millimeter guy.
Yeah.
Lee, what is a hot take that you have?
So I've got
a
couple of spicy ones here, but I'm going to start with Richard Mille is actually really cool.
Ooh.
And this is very divisive in watch collectors because I think the typical take on that is, well, Richard Mille is for super rich people or Rafael Nadal or something like that, and you never see them out in public because they're so shockingly expensive, and they're gaudy and they're weird and a lot of them are skeletonized, which people have different feelings on. But I was actually on a work trip in Vegas years ago. I stopped into a local kind of one of the malls there that has all of the big brands there, Rolex, et cetera. And we popped into the Richard Mille store, and the experience was just, first of all, world class.
I can't even imagine.
Like walking in there, they were really cool. And the first thing I said was, I cannot afford to buy a watch that costs as much as my house. So I'm just going to put that out there. Like, is it cool? We like hang out. And he was like, 100%. Like, come here. We sat down at the bar there. He actually they didn't have much in stock because they're obviously hugely in demand, but he had two watches. One was, I think, the Sly Stallone, like Commando watch, which is to your point, a huge watch. It's like 48 millimeters or something like that. But we started talking about it, and actually Richard Mille does pretty much the vast majority of their parts manufacturing and engineering in-house. He handed me a brand book that's like 80 pages deep of just engineering processes that they do. And that's their big spiel is you can wear this watch when you golf. So like Bubba Watson wears Richard Mille, really cool, and he literally wears it, and it's shockproof. So a lot of the tennis players wear them. So there's actually a crazy amount of engineering in those. So if you appreciate mechanical watches, I think you have to appreciate Richard Mille, whether you like the style or not.
I will. Yeah, that is super fair. And most of my biases, like I didn't know any of that. Most of my biases come from just like not liking the way it looks.
That's right. Yeah,
and that's super fair. Yeah, maybe I should be like nicer to Richard Mille. It's also one of those brands that I don't talk about a lot because I don't have the money to talk about it. But as a watch collector, you hear about it all the time. And if I had that bankroll, I probably would be wearing one right now. So.
What would be your ultra luxury watch then? We're talking about like, right, if you are at the point where you can't fit another Ferrari in your garage and you're like, okay, well, I got $2 million burning a hole in my pocket. What are you getting?
Gosh, there's so many ways to go with that, right? Because, you could look at it by brands, like what would be my top Rolex, or would it be a Richard Mille or something like that? But
I wouldn't consider Rolex ultra luxury. I'm talking only ultra luxury.
I think you're fair. Vintage is that's another good call out.
Like a Paul Newman, like an OG.
I was going to say, like I'd probably go, like if I had to go that route, vintage would be like an OG Paul Newman, Daytona, something like that. But if it's a modern watch, it's got to be weird. Like people have to look at that and say, that is nothing I ever see. And I might consider Richard Mille, honestly. Okay. I might consider it. I'm not I'm not a showing guy. Yeah, I was going to ask, what's your guys' grail?
Oh, I have the mic. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. But yeah, what I will say is like, especially guys, some people really get into style, but I'm not one of those guys. So like when I have a watch, like that is a huge expression for me. So I think that's an excellent way to do it. It's just like, hey, I have this like huge Richard Mille, like I'm into it because of X, Y, and Z. Like I can do that. I can't do that with a pair of jeans. You know what I mean? Some people can, and that's okay. But it's just like an expression thing. So I don't know what I would pick for ultra luxury. And to be honest with you, I it's never like attracted me in a lot of ways because I came from like this rooted like middle class family. So that's why I really appreciate the Rolex branding in a way because it's like they kind of cater to that person that's like
Yeah,
you
that's
finally
right.
kind of made it and not made it in like I'm a millionaire kind of way. I made it like, hey, I have a good job and I'm a businessman and like they call it the management watch for a
That's
reason.
right. Yeah.
And you know, there's something admirable about that. So that's kind of why I like the branding. But
I know it's Richard Mille, and I believe this is the one. Didn't they create the ultra thin Ferrari one?
I believe they did.
Yes,
Yeah, that
that'd be
crazy.
mine.
I love that.
Because
I
it would
love
fit on
that.
this wrist.
Heck yeah.
That's it. Done. All
I
right,
love that.
my call.
all right, whose hot take is it?
I think it's Emiliano's.
Rip it.
What would you say to people? Because I know that this is a hot take, and it's one that you're in. Modding, watch modding. I think some people absolutely despise it, think it's the worst. Like, what do you mean you're going to copy? Just go get a Rolex, right? Or what do you mean you're going to kind of like take this design? And what do you think? Because I think a certain someone to my left is not a big fan.
Oh yeah. And what's your take on it?
I think if it's an expression,
Yeah.
absolutely, right?
Yeah.
If you're expressing yourself in the sense of I want loud, I want like a loud design, and nobody else has built something, and I want to make it personally, great. Or if you're really into the mechanics of it, and you're just like those tinkerers that like loved customizing the Nintendo DS, right? And they would like take it apart, the Game Boy. I have no problem. I'm pretty indifferent. I'm pretty indifferent when it comes to watch modding. I think if it's cool and it appeals to you, it's cool for me.
What's your take?
My take is
Watch. Why do you want to sell it?
Well, either I don't need to know what time it is or I need money. What do you care?
watch modding is super cool, and okay, that's not my take, guys. My take is watch modding is okay if you're being true to the watch brand, like you said, like OEM, adding OEM parts. But if you're like, hey, I'm gonna take this Seiko and then make it a GMT master and try to like wear it to a bar and fool people, that's where I'm like, okay, guy, get out of here. And that's the same way I feel about homage brands. A lot of people are comfortable with homage brands. Not that guy. I don't know. I'm all about authenticity. I would rather just wear a Seiko and just be like, yeah, this is a cool, like this is a Willard, and it's cool because it's rooted in this story. Like then try to portray something that it's not, because I feel like you lose a part of yourself when you do that. So
Yeah, that's a great call out. I think like there's a fine line between something being an upgrade and something being something else, right?
Yeah.
So like a Fiero Ferrari or something like that. Like
Yeah.
that's the opposite end of the spectrum. And I think I agree. If you're trying to build a mod design to fool someone into thinking that you're wearing a GMT2 when you aren't, then that's kind of the gray area that most folks would agree is not great. But if you just love that GMT style and you want something that kind of looks like that, but you want to keep the Seiko true, there are great Seiko GMTs that you can build a mod off of. So start there. Maybe you don't like, one of the reasons why I originally started modding Seikos was the Hardlex. That Hardlex crystal scratches really easily.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I realized there's a sapphire crystal I can put in these. So let's put a sapphire on. Now it's more durable. This bezel insert is aluminum. It scratches really easily. Well, I can do a sapphire insert or a ceramic insert, right? So I think like if you take that approach and you're true to what it is, you don't pretend or pawn it off as being something else, then that's true. And then again, I don't think you're getting in the line of fakes, because I think that's a whole other conversation we could have.
Certainly.
Like, and that's probably its own hot take, is like people wearing fakes intentionally. And I think I've known many people that have done that.
Yeah.
But no, I think by and large, like that's fair criticisms all around.
Yeah, I want to talk about hot takes, but I don't want to, or fakes, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Okay, I think we're going this way now. Not really a hot take, but I don't think two-tone watches get the respect they deserve.
Ooh, yeah. All right.
One of my favorite watches, and it is a watch that I will own soon, probably. They're like $5,000 on eBay. It is the Rolex two-tone with a blue dial. Date just.
Yeah.
I think that is such a clean look. You have like the gold fluted bezel, the Jubilee bracelet, and then just like this blue dial that sticks out. I think it's a stunning watch. Yeah, I don't think two-tone, it kind of gets like trash talked. I don't know why.
I totally agree with you. In fact, I think one of Rolex's best releases was the new two-tone 36mm Explorer.
Yeah.
So we were talking about a smooth bezel you can consider for the future. Great watch.
Like that watch.
I like that watch. Would I buy it? Yeah. Would I buy it? I don't know. It's maybe not for me, but we've had a couple of local club members that have had them, and they're cool, man. Like two-tone's rad. What about you, Emiliano? What do you think?
I told you one of my favorite two-tone watches is the root beer.
Yeah,
I think.
great
and
watch.
I think a vintage root beer, the patina on a vintage root beer, where like you almost can't tell. It's almost like a sunset.
Yes.
money.
You
I
got
agree. I think. Do you think the bluesy kind of permeated the market too much and made people a little like, all right, dude, that's just another two-tone?
Yeah, I think the bluesy was a very like 80s, 90s vibe.
Yeah,
You know, I don't think it aged. I don't want to, again, yuck anybody's yum here, but like, I don't
We're
think
a bluesy right now.
I don't know that it's like the vibe that I think most people are going for with two-tone. Like there's something about the blue that it feels very like more older, like if you're later in life, but like two-tone can be done really well. Like Tudor does some amazing two-tone releases. Bronze is another one. Like there's some great bronze and steel versions of watches. So yeah, I'm into it. I like that call.
I like Tudor's root beer.
Yeah,
And,
Tudor's root beer is a great watch.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
I don't think they use a rose gold. I think they use like a true yellow gold. All right, Lee, your turn.
My turn. Okay, so this is also, I think, pretty controversial among
Yeah.
many watch collectors. It's okay to baby your watches.
Don't touch the watch.
Now, I say that with that it's also okay to beat up watches if that's your thing. And
Yeah.
if you have tool-specific watches, like we were talking about a diver that was wearing his Pelagos literally into the depths.
Shout out to Kyle.
Shout out to Kyle. Nice. I mean, that's a great way to wear that watch. That was purposely built for that. But, you know, if you have a really nice car,
Yeah.
you like what I used to do is park like in the middle of nowhere in the parking
I
lot,
still do
away
that.
from every other car, because you see people just throwing their doors open, digging it.
Yep.
You don't want dings. You don't want nicks. You don't want scratches on a nice car. I look at watches in the same way. So like people always comment, like they'll see my Daytona and say, how long have you had that? Like I don't even see any scratches or dings on it. I'm like, yeah, I have actually conditioned my muscle memory to not like swing my wrist
too.
into doors or to like scratch it along desktops, because I just like, maybe it's OCD, right? Like maybe I've just got some like, it needs to be perfect. But if I do get a scratch on a watch, it's like a big deal for me. Now I do have watches that I'll beat up like G-Shocks, but even so, like I think I've conditioned myself to be more careful with my wrist.
Yeah, and you hear a lot of people like, oh, like if you're afraid to get scratches on your watch, like you don't have the money for it. That is not true.
It's not true at all. Yeah.
Quick derailment of that. I just got my car was just scratched by somebody that just pulled out, and brand new car. And I was like,
man.
you know, it's probably like the scratches were probably like 2 inches long, but I'm like, I know it's there, so I'm gonna go get it fixed. I had to pay out of pocket for it. It was like $2,000, but like I'm the same way with my watches. I was always the kind of guy that's like, you know, like Neil Krishnan, one of our good friends who's in the military. He's like, hey man, just stop babying your Submariner. And I'm like, I can't help it, because every time I look down at the Submariner, I don't see a Submariner anymore. I see scratches. And John Mayer, in one of the Talking Watches, he said something that's like pretty profound, and it helped me get over my problem with scratches. And he was like, one day you'll buy a watch, and then 3 years later you'll finally gift it to yourself. And that's very true. I feel like I've hit the point now. I've owned this Submariner for like almost 3 years. I threw it on a NATO. I took the bracelet off. It has scratches everywhere. I finally have gifted it to myself, and I'll do whatever I want with it. But there are definitely like some watches like this one, like where I'm like not ready to
Very
see scratches
careful.
on it.
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
Yeah, I got nothing else. I think that's something that I really appreciate with vintage watches. The ding's already there.
Yeah.
So now it's your time.
I agree.
Like it's your kind of time to take on and create that wear and tear that has its own memory.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely.
And that's why I'm like still kind of afraid to buy a new watch, because I know I will kick myself on that first scratch.
It's
I will
true.
Be like, no, why did I do that?
Life is short, you know. Like,
Yeah.
You got to enjoy your watches. Life is short. Just wear it. Just wear the dang thing. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, no one's gonna notice except for you. So just enjoy it. You know, that's why you bought it. So I didn't spend $10,000 on a watch to put it in my safe. You know, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Any other looming hot takes?
Maybe I'll throw one more out there that's maybe
Okay.
a little bit more controversial.
Okay,
Should we go that route?
I would love to hear it. Yeah,
Um,
I have one too, and then we can wrap it. But
So I don't know if you guys have seen the meme online where it's like a watch collecting curve, where it's like you start out with Seiko, and then you're like, I hit my vintage curve, and then I'm like
Yes,
Rolex, and I'm like, sell everything. I have one watch left. Like that's
Yep.
your exit watch. Well, I feel like when you meet with different collectors, and I'm very fortunate to be in two clubs, co-president of the DMV Watch Club and the
Yeah.
Carolina Watch Club I'm a member of. You get to see people from all walks of life, from all budget areas, from
Yeah.
all likes and dislikes. And I feel like right now in the community, there's this emerging desire to have watches that are made by very niche, independent designers.
Yeah.
And I do think that's really cool, right? Because I love supporting small businesses. I've actually been on a micro brand kick lately. There's a micro brand show here in DC at District Time coming up next
I'm
weekend.
working
That will
next
be there.
weekend.
Nice.
Yeah.
So like I love seeing people's passion being put out into a watch, but I also feel like it's a little bit of hype chasing. Like I feel like these watches are so limited, And some of them, frankly, are not even that high quality. Like the movements aren't
I
great.
agree.
They're not running properly or well. And I just feel like they're being bought for the sake of being bought and not because they are actually cool. So
I absolutely love that take, and I'm gonna double down on it and probably upset a lot of people. And then for all the 20 followers that I have on YouTube right now, I'm gonna lose like 6. Yeah, I think independent watches are uninspiring, to be honest with you. Um, but that's coming from a guy that is like that owns a vintage watch company. I like watches because I like the story behind them.
yeah,
That is why that's why I got into watches. That's why I like the watches I like, is because of the story. Um, Independent watchmaking, it's hard to find that, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but it's not in the same way. Like, oh, the Rolex Explorer like is rooted to Mount Everest, and it's like the independent watchmakers like, oh, I used to work for Patek Philippe, and now I'm that's cool. Okay, I don't care though. That's great. You can carve watches, but it's not inspiring to me the same way that it calls for adventure like something else. Yeah, that's my take. I find them to be kind of boring. I appreciate guilloche and doing all these amazing things, but if I'm paying $10,000 and I see an edit movement in there that you've carved out, that's great, but it's not for me. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, I do want to give credit because there's a lot of amazing independents out
Oh,
there.
certainly.
Like I was up in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania a couple months ago, and I met with the owner of RGM Watches, which is a watchmaking company that's been here for a while. But he was one of the original research and development watchmakers for Hamilton. And what really struck me about that was like his story played out in his watch designs, his capabilities, and like to me, like you said, with vintage watches, it's all about the story. Any watch you buy should be about the story. What is it doing for you? What emotions is it invoking? Or the people who made it, what are they trying to do? Are they just trying to make something weird and cool because it's weird and cool? Or there's 1,000 people that can do that. If you have enough money, you can
Kind of like
start your own
Studio
watch company.
Underdog. Like,
Right,
that's
yeah,
a
exactly.
funky watch.
That's
Yeah,
a hot take.
yeah.
I like Studio Underdog.
Yeah.
That's the only one that's on his approved list.
But anyway, I'm curious to hear your take on the independents, or if you've spent a lot of time there.
So I kind of at first not knowing, because a lot of the independents kind of are within like a beginner's budget, right? And so at first, well, to an extent, and like you got your Truscas, you have your like Wise, you have Studio Underdogs. Even though they're hard to come by, they're not that relatively expensive watch. So I did kind of enjoy them. Now I go back to a lot of face value.
Yeah.
Does it appeal to you? And if that's the case, and if that's what matters, that's it. I agree to an extent. Like, I don't think I'll get an independent watch unless it really convinces me of its origin, of its story, and how I can then be a steward of that story.
Yes.
I think I could be a steward of a lot of great watch brands that are seated in a lot of history. I don't know if I found an independent brand that can give me that yet.
Norcane. Are they independent? Like
I think they're considered an independent still. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe like teetering away from that now that they're gaining like a lot of publicity. But I like Norcane, but I like the story of Norcane.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, I'm leaving Breitling. We're departing that, and we're gonna do our own thing, and it's gonna be completely different. There's a lot of respect I have for that. So yeah, I think what Emiliano said, different strokes for different folks. You like what you like. I'm not hating you, but I'm not gonna bat an eye if you like independence either. So cool. All right, I'm gonna end it with one. And I'm sorry, Lee, you're wearing it, but I think chronographs are an overrated complication.
Oh yeah, that's the hottest of takes. I love that.
I think I don't have a good reason for thinking that, but I think it's lifestyle, maybe a little bit of lifestyle. Like if you're into racing and like you're a big like Daytona guy or like NASCAR guy or like you like F1, I could see why you like the Daytona or you like a chronograph. Just don't tell me that it's reasonable or like you use it. I dived in Hawaii. Okay, I did a lot of that. I never took my Submariner. I used that to time meetings at work. Okay, so it's okay if you have a chronograph. Just don't explain to me how it is like this functional piece that you rely on daily, because it's not, and you're lying. That's my hot take about chronographs. I think a GMT is infinitely more functional. Let's hear it, guys.
Okay, I will say I do remember when I first got a watch, as long as I could remember, and I think this is like the same thing that has brought chronographs like and why people still wear it. Did you just like time random things when you were younger? You'd just be like, how long would this take? And you'd like clock, something. I
Foot
feel
races
like
on the playground.
that's a grown up
Yeah.
chronograph. Like
Yeah.
you got your Panda and you're just,
Yeah.
you'll be driving and you're like, how long does it take to pump gas? And you just click it and then you're like, wow, oh yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Other than that, I will say I'm a big simple watch face,
Me too.
and I think a chronograph has to be extremely well done. And there are very few on my list that meet that criteria. for me to
100%.
own one.
Yeah, 100% true. Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, the reality is no one we can take our phones now and time anything, split time anything. The chronograph actually in some ways is a worse ownership experience too, because it costs more to service.
Yep.
There's more that can go wrong. Right. Like there's all these issues that come up with chronographs. So I totally agree. And I think especially when you get into the vintage area, vintage chronographs are scary land. Like you've got to really, I've owned a few. I had a few Seikos that I just got wrecked on service costs because like nobody carries the parts for those anymore, right? Like Seikos were back then were just like the working man's watch, which is great.
And they were
But
beat up. And
they were
used,
beat
which
up.
is great.
They were used hard, but watchmakers didn't collect parts for those because
Absolutely.
they were seen as like a disposable almost. Maybe that's a little extreme, but they typically watchmakers hoarded Swiss parts because Swiss watches were taken care of. They were passed down. They were designed to last for a really long time. Now it's different. Obviously, Seiko makes incredible watches. Grand Seiko makes some of the best watches in the world.
Unreal.
But I agree, man. Like the chronograph it's a cool thing. If I was being honest, I'd maybe use something, maybe time something twice on this. It was like an egg timer or something, or like
just like, okay, cool,
cooking
it
a
works.
steak. Like, yeah, just hit this real quick. So yeah,
And you did it to say that you
to
have
say that I actually used it. Yes, I have actually used it. And I'll go a step further. The fact that the Daytona still has screw down chronograph pushers is super annoying. Like
very.
there's really
you
no
can't-
reason for that. Like it just makes it a more frustrating experience to use it. But,
Ladies and gentlemen, that's I think that's all we have for. So if you've unfollowed or unsubscribed, that's okay. If you like the content, go ahead and give us a follow or subscribe. We're Leather and Loom. Lee is WatchMod Perfect on Instagram. Lee, any other social media plugs you got?
No, that's it. I just really appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me out here. And of course, our friends
Don.
at Wrist Clean. Hope you guys enjoy that.
Yeah.
I use that stuff every day. It's awesome.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's all we have time for. Thanks.
Thanks.
That was awesome.